tip of the day. And this is something that I think about a lot because I make my own yarn. Or I have it. Well, I do spin my own yarn too, but also I, have it manufactured for me. And so I think about this topic a lot, and that's standard weights of yarn. The 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of yarn, or the fingering, DK, worsted, Aran, bulky, all those. Those are the standard weights. And the first thing I want to say about that is that those standard weights it's a continuum, going from the very finest lace weight so that you can make a beautiful christening gown, all the way up to something that's super chunky, bulky, that you could make a blanket with really in no time at all. It's a continuum. And in the yarn industry, what happens is the yarn companies will, make a new yarn, and they will give it to the yarn committee. I don't know exactly what it's called, but they'll give it to this committee. They'll give them skeins of the yarn. They'll give them different needles, and each person knits off a swatch of some kind. Then they all come back together to look and see which of these different samples that different people knit with different needle sizes, which of those that they like the best. After that, it then goes to the next person. We're just going to call her Ethel. And at most of these companies, that's just one person. There's one person that's knitting all these gauge swatches for the band, for the yarn band, that gives that information. And because it's one person, it's like comparing apples to apples. And so they give it to Ethel, and she's the one that determines, this yarn gauge is, 6 stitches to the inch and so many rows to the inch. And that's what gets published on the label. It's written in gold. The real world doesn't work that way, right? And as a farm manufacturer, what happens is that the mills can't always hit those standard weights right on the money. So a lot of my yarns are along this continuum where they're not quite worsted, but they're more than DK. So in that case, what I will say is I'll say, this is a heavy DK, or this is a light worsted, or this is a light sport or a heavy fingering. But it's on a continuum there. And this is really important when you are wanting to make a pattern out of yarn that may not be the same yarn that the pattern calls for. Whether that's a farm yarn or whether that's, it calls for Malabrigo and you want to use, a Flying Go Farm commercial yarn that is also fingering. It may not be exactly the same weight as what was used by the designer or the company that put out that pattern. And that's why doing swatching is so important. And I know that swatching, people hate to swatch. They really do hate to swatch because, it's more fun to just let's just cast on and get into it. Especially when you're doing something that's like a scarf or a shawl. Why do I have to swatch? What's so important about that? And the reason that I would say it is important is because you want to know that you have enough yarn. If your gauge swatch is off significantly, then your yarn requirements are going to be off significantly. And so you might run out of yarn before you get to the end. Or in a better case scenario, you bought way too much and you really don't need it, and now you have this extra skein or two or ball or two. Now what do I do with it? Right? So that's why doing a gauge swatch is really important. And it's really important if you're going to do something that needs to fit. If it's a sweater, please do a gauge swatch. You really need to. And what I say about that with a sweater, I'm pointing over there because I have a sweater hanging up right there. Your gauge swatch could be starting a sleeve, right? Then it's not, you're doing it in the round, like you will be doing the sweater in the round. And you can exactly see what is going to happen. And if you like it, and if the swatch matches what the gauge, what the pattern requires, then you keep going. And if not, if you need to change a needle size, or you need to change some tension or something like that, you can see that right away. And you're hoping for the best case scenario, right? And a lot of us know what kind of knitters we are. I know, for instance, that I am a tight knitter. So I will usually, I will start with the needle that is asked for, but I will probably have to go up a size. Some people who are loose knitters, or if I'm doing continental, I'm looser in a continental stitch. So then I know I'll start with what they're requiring, but then I might have to go down a size or two to get the right gauge, and so that it fits, so that it's not like 3 sizes too big or 3 sizes too small, or you don't run out of yarn. So I had these are both commercial yarns. This one is what I call my really fine. It's a superwash merino. This one is my Cory sock, which is like my workhorse yarn. And they're both number ones. They're both 400 yards and 4 ounces. You would think that they would look the same, but these two do not look the same. This one is much finer than this one. I have a quarter here, and I was going to hold that up so that you could see it even better with a size. So the pink one there is the Cory sock, and the purple one is the really fine. And they are both ones. And they have the same number of yards per pound. And they take different needles. Or if you use the same needle, you're going to get 2 different fabrics. When I make socks with the really fine, I use size 1 needles on this. If I make socks with my really fine, with the Cory sock, I use size 2 needles. And I get similar fabrics because this one is bigger than this one. So you can't just go by the label, and you can't just go by the number of yards per ounce or per gram. It's a little bit more than that. So that's why I'm here to tell you, especially if it's something that you really are excited about making, you really need to do a swatch so that you know that you have enough to complete the project. That's the tip of the day.